right, well, good evening. A few days ago, we got an email, all the speakers from Lenny, and said, you've got 15 minutes and nothing more. And if you go over, the plug is coming out. And then he had PS, he said, and by the way, my introductions are coming out of your 15 minutes. So thanks for the short introduction, Lenny, I appreciate that. Well, as a faculty member whose entire course load is actually online, I live in Los Angeles, it's especially interesting for me to see how computers have changed the way we live, especially in just a few short generations. And it used to be that the older we became, the wiser we were, at least we thought we were, and the more people would come to us and listen to our advice and seek out our wisdom. But computers have just about turned that generational flip side upside down. I don't know if you can see this, but I brought along a couple cartoons. I enjoyed smiling along life's way. And I don't know if you probably can't read this. It's a picture of a little kid and his dad at a computer. Well, I can relate to the dad. He says, "In return for an increase in my allowance, Dad, I can offer you free, unlimited, in-home computer tech support." And so it's not the way it used to be. In education, while the traditional classroom and teacher-student dynamics are continuing, and they will in great ways here in this fantastic building, the computer has actually changed things in that area as well. Online students, I think probably more than half of the students at Wesley Seminary most of their courses are online. It's my privilege to teach the first online course in the Master Divinity program that the students have. And for many of these students, it's actually their first online course ever. And you can imagine the first several weeks are, they're not without some certain level of anxiety. Along another little cartoon here, the wife is looking over the husband's shoulders, and she says, "How are the online classes going?" And he says, "Not good. I just got sent to the principal's chat room." So being an online instructor means that you actually never see the faces of the students in your classroom, nor do they see your face. And it's a little bit of a different way that we used to do things. A couple of months ago, I was here on campus, and a student walked up, and I didn't recognize him until he gave me his name. And I said, "Oh, Aaron, how are you?" And he said, "I'm fine, Dr. Arnn." And he looked at me and said, "You know, you're not nearly as intimidating in person as you are online." I guess he thought of me as some kind of a 8-foot monster or something. But anyway, it's just something a little different to see who's on the other side of your computer. In fact, here's one other cartoon we have, a little picture of a dog sitting in front of a computer, another dog looking up, very impressed. And the first one says, "On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog." So I can relate to that. But by the end of the degree program, students find that they have had a significant learning experience. The research, in fact, shows that when two groups of people are taken through the same material, one online and one on site, and given the same tests at the end of their instruction, there's no significant difference in either of the two groups. And in fact, the learning that takes place and the application of that learning happens as well online as it does on site. So it's an interesting experience. In fact, when you graduate, there's a real sense of camaraderie among the groups that have gone through the program. One final cartoon here, just again, it's not as big as it could be, but there's two women in the back and a fella, he hasn't shaved in a few days. He's got his diploma hat on, and he's got this right in front of the computer, and down below it says, "Irwin graduates from his online program today." So Irwin's made it through it. It's a little funnier when you can see the picture, but well, all right, so I've got now 12 minutes to finish up and share a few thoughts that I hope will be helpful as in terms of effective ministry in your church and your community. Brought along a few notes, and I'll read them if you can't see them too well. But the question comes to my mind, if your church were a business, and of course it's not, but when you think about it, there are some similarities in terms of some of the issues of finances and personnel and shareholders. But if your church were a business, an interesting question for me, and perhaps for you, is the question, what would be your product? What would it be that the people in your community want, need, and could find best in your church? My suggestion is that it could be, in fact, perhaps it should be, the product of love. No doubt the people in your community need your product. Mother Teresa once said to an American couple, upon returning from the U.S., she said, "I have seen the starving in the world, but in your community, in your country, I have seen an even greater hunger. and that is the hunger to be loved. No place in all my travels have I seen such loneliness as I have seen in the poverty of affluence in America. William Penn, early American colonist, was quoted one time as saying, "Love is the hardest lesson in Christianity. But for that reason, it should be most our care to learn it." Imagine that you were to rebrand your church, change the name, and you went under the banner of the Wesleyan Love Training Center. Why not? 1 John 4:8 tells us that God is love. Genesis 1:27 says that God created us in his image. When you think about it, we were created to love. The Bible speaks more about love than any other topic. Why shouldn't your church be the place that focuses on that ingredient so central to a complete and fulfilled life? So if I may, I'd like to suggest a definition. Love is intentionally doing something caring or helpful for another person, regardless of the cost or consequences to oneself. Let's take a look at some of the key words and phrases. First of all, intentionally. Love does not just happen. You don't just fall in love. Love is planned, premeditated, and a conscious decision. Doing something. Love is action. If it is not seen or observed or experienced, there's cause to doubt whether it really is love. 1 John 3:18 we read, "Let us stop saying we love people. Let us really love them and show it by our actions." The dictionary defines caring as a feeling of concern and protection. The ultimate act of caring is giving one's life to protect the object of one's love. Scripture again tells us, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought also to lay down our lives for our brothers. For another person. Love is always focused on a person. Love does not exist in a vacuum. It's not some conjured up feeling or some state of mind. Love must focus on an individual. And finally, regardless of the cost or consequences to oneself, true love puts others ahead of ourselves. It does not say, "I love you if it doesn't cost anything," or "if it's convenient," or "if I don't get hurt in the process." Can you imagine God putting those conditions on his love for us? Therefore, we read in Ephesians, be imitators of God as dearly loved children. Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice. So can we learn to love? Can we be better at loving? Well, I'd suggest the answer is a resounding yes. I'd like to give you 7 short steps to begin the process of becoming a more loving person. Step number 1, identify the people who need your love. For you to experience joy in the growth of loving, select one person in each of the following categories I'd like to give you that God has put in your life. Category number 1, a family or a friend. One person. You don't need to do it now, but it's a homework assignment. Number 2, an acquaintance. Perhaps a neighbor, a colleague, fellow school or work associate. Pick one person that you know is someone in need. Category number 3, the Bible makes a pointed comment. If anyone sees someone in need yet closes their heart against that person, how can God's love abide in him? And number 4, an enemy. Jesus was right. If you love only those who love you, what good is that? Even scoundrels do as much. Enemies in Matthew 5:44, Jesus talks about as people who mistreat you, people who speak negatively of you, who despise you. So one person in each of the following 4 categories. Step number 2, act first. So often we wait for the other person to make the first move. Will he stop? Will she smile? Will they invite us over? Don't wait for the other person. Make a lifestyle of taking the initiative and acting first. Step 3, deepen your level of communication. As communication grows, love grows. Most communication occurs at one of 4 levels in terms of the communication spectrum, beginning with most superficial and moving to most intimate. The first level of communication is generally the exchange of cliches. Hi, how you doing? Oh, good. Have a nice day. and we're done. A second level of communication is the exchange of data and information. Did you hear about the Colts' new linebacker? Or the forecast says it's going to rain. Exchange of information. Step number 3, a bit more intimate, is the exchange of ideas and opinions. Well, I think this issue is really important. Or, I couldn't believe he said that about her. Step number 4, probably the most intimate level, is the exchange of emotions and feelings. You know, I was really frightened when that happened. Or, I'm sorry I treated you that way. So your assignment is to try communicating one level deeper in the coming weeks with the people you just identified. In your conversation, if it's mostly cliches, try moving to a bit of information. Share something more about the weather or the news. Maybe express a more personal opinion. If you talk mostly about ideas and information, stretch your thinking and share a feeling, maybe a frustration, maybe a joy. Admit a disappointment. Step number 4. Empathy is defined as identifying with or vicariously experiencing the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of another person. In a sense, you become that person. You see the world through their eyes. You feel what they feel. The Associated Press carried a wonderful story recently on empathy. It was a story of Manuel Garcia and his friends and family who said, "We love you." I'll just read a bit of it. It reads, Manuel Garcia feared that when he shaved his head to get rid of patches of hair left by chemotherapy, quote, "I would feel very self-conscious that everyone would stare at me." He didn't need to worry. The article goes on. Before Garcia was released from the Milwaukee Medical Complex after treatment, his friend and 3 relatives came into his room with bald heads. "I just started laughing," said Garcia. He said, "They told me, we're here so you won't be alone." When he arrived at his home and neighborhood, his neighborhood was teeming with bald heads. You can't see that very well, but it's actually a news print, and Manuel Garcia is in the middle, and must be a couple dozen bald-headed friends and family in the name of love. Step number 5, identify a love opportunity. As you begin to empathize and see the world from the perspective of the people you're learning to love, you will identify their needs and your opportunities. Then you can take the next step. Respond with an appropriate gift. A good gift says much more than good words. Learning to be a good gift giver is an important step in learning to be a good lover. A good gift has 4 characteristics. First of all, a good gift is meaningful, based on the needs of the person receiving it. A good gift is sacrificial, otherwise it would just be convenience. A good gift is unexpected, rather than predictable due to protocol or expectations. And finally, a good gift is unconditional, with no expectation of return. A good gift may or may not be purchased at a local shopping mall. A good gift could be the gift of forgiveness with someone you argued with. A good gift could be a gift of appreciation to a person who feels neglected. You can give the gift of support to a person who is alone and uncertain. And finally, number 7, share yourself. Sharing this most treasured possession is hard because it's all you have. It's you. Sharing yourself means loving another person as yourself. Jesus calls it the greatest commandment. If you're curious about exploring your own love ability, where you are and where you have to grow, I brought some copies of a personal love caring inventory to measure your love quotient. On the way out, Aaron will have a stack of things somewhere on the table. In fact, speaking about Aaron, that reminds me that I'll tell you something about it that I'll probably forget at the end, but I don't want to interrupt the brilliant conclusion here. So, what's your personal love quotient? So what you need to do, I've got a copy here. It looks like this. It says your personal love caring inventory. And you're free to copy this if you'd like. In fact, if you'd like, you can take it home and answer it in the closet with all the lights out and not tell anyone what your personal IQ is. But if you'd like, and some bold folks do, they'll make a copy, give it to someone they know who knows them, spouse, friend, family member, and have them fill it out on you. And then you fill out your own love quotient, compare notes. If nothing else, it makes for a great conversation topic. Well, in conclusion, here we are, opening our new building and enjoying the history of John Wesley. It'd probably be nothing more than appropriate to quote John Wesley himself. In a letter to Joseph Benson, dated November 7, 1768, Wesley said, quote, "Beware, you are not swallowed up in books, for an ounce of love is worth a pound of knowledge." So, good to be with you. What Aaron had asked me to do is if there's about a dozen people standing around, and if there's an empty chair next to you, if you would squeeze in, and we'll change speakers and go from there, and that will be fine. And so pick up your personal love care quotient on the house, no copyrights, yours, and take a look.